John, tell me where you want to be.
This museum, welcome to our annual Emancipation Day celebration. This event takes place always near May 20th. May 20th was the date that General McCook announced to the enslaved Africans in Tallahassee that they were free. You've heard of June 10th, but in Florida, we celebrate Emancipation on May 20th. This is a custom that has been celebrated in this town ever since the first African Americans came here. Years ago, they used to hold parades. And in fact, if you look in some of the history books, you're going to see the 1910 Emancipation Day Parade. It is my great, great honor to introduce to you John Griffin, who was a descendant of the Black Seminoles in Florida. I've sat and listened to his stories, and I can tell you, you are just going to be enthralled. He is amazing. He will probably tell you his Seminole name. But for right now, just sit back and enjoy. He is amazing. John, thank you so much for being here.
Ted Tomo, I would like to thank Ms. Marito for inviting me and her friends. And I would like to let's start off by saying I thank God for letting me get here safe and sound. And what I'm about to tell you about is about a people called Black Seminoles. Now, a lot of people never heard of such a thing called a Black Seminole. They come up to me and say, "Are you Black and Seminole?" But the story I'm going to tell you about is people who live as far back as the 1670s all the way up to 1835. The people we call Black Seminoles was escaped slaves. Most people think all the slaves try to go north, but the slaves that live in Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, they made up their mind that they would come over into Spanish Florida. The reason for that, because Spain had lost ground with owning Florida. We had Great Britain, they wanted to take it. Also, the United States of America, they had their eye on Florida, and they said, we're going to take this state called Florida. So the Spanish people at that time was at war with Napoleon Bonaparte in France. They couldn't get supplies, they couldn't get men. So the King of Spain came up with the idea, let's invite all runaway slaves and all runaway Native Americans over into Florida. These people we call Black Seminoles, they came out of South Carolina. They were people called the Gullah Geechee people, we call today. The Gullah people came from Angola. That's where the name Gullah come from. And the Geechee name came from a part of Africa called Gizi. They were rice planters. They came from Sierra Leone in Africa, where they raised rice, and some guy had a bright idea, said, well, South Carolina got the same coastal area, why not bring these West Africans in and let's start the rice production business here in the South. But there was another people we call Seminole. They came out of Georgia and Alabama. These people we call Seminole, the white people call them Creek Indians because they were so many different groups. They couldn't remember half of the names they had. They say, well, these people live by creeks and waterways. Let's call them all Creek Indians. The United States government wanted to take Alabama and Georgia. They kept pushing them south. Those who lived along the Chattahoochee River, they finally came over to Spanish territory. When they came over to Spanish territory, the Spanish call them El Cimarron, meaning you are a runaway or you are a wild person. And the name ended up Seminole. The word Seminole means runaway. But the Seminole people say, oh, that's not our name. We were called Ishte Seminole before the white man come. That means we are people from a distant far. We come from somewhere else. These people that came over called Seminoles, the Spanish government gave them weapons, told them you can live on our lands if you just help us fight against the Americans. And also the blacks that was here hiding out in the swamps before the Indians even got here. They were hiding out in the swamps like the Ophionoke swamps. They were there during 1670 on up to 1830. Blacks was living here in the swamps hiding out. Today we call these people maroons. Maroon people. But after a while, the blacks came in contact with the Seminoles. Back in that time, there were Creek Indians who had slaves. The Cherokees were big slave owners. And so at a period of time, they would give blacks as a gift to the Seminole people. The Seminole people said, well, we don't have time to be in the slave business. So when the blacks came in contact with them, they told the blacks, say, I heard you got agricultural skills. I heard you know how to deal with livestock. I heard that you know how to speak English. I heard that you know the ways of white people. Also, you can act as spies. Come on, be with us. So the blacks started running to the Seminoles. Seminoles told them, say, when the slave owners come at you, we're telling you belong to us. And what you should do, you can live with us or you can live afar from us. These blacks at the end of the year will give the Seminoles a little portion of the crop, maybe 10 bushels, or maybe give them a side of beef. And that was the deal they made. They said when these slave owners come at you, we'll tell them, you can't take our slaves because they belong to us. They're our friends. And that allyship continued on. The blacks took up the ways of the Seminoles. They dressed like the Seminoles. They even did things like the Seminoles. Some blacks live afar from the Seminoles because they wanted to keep their cultural practices. Bottom was Christians, and the Seminoles had an entirely different belief. So after a period of time, these blacks and Seminoles, they made up their mind, say, well, let's start raiding plantations where we can steal more slaves and we can build up our group. The blacks started burning sugarcane plantations. They started building up their group and their numbers. And after a while, after they started killing white people, burning plantations, then that's when the military got involved. There was a man named Andrew Jackson. I know Seminole people today who will not put their hand on a $20 bill because of him. Believe it or not, when the Native Americans and the blacks started burning plantations, the white people, they got fearful. They ran to the military. Andrew Jackson, who was a general at that time, he said, well, I know how to deal with Indians and blacks. I'll come down and take care of that. He came down to Florida, and his goal was to send all the slaves back to the plantations. His goal was to remove all the Indians out of the area and take care of that problem. But these people who have been here for a while, they say, well, this is my home. The blacks say, I'm enjoying this freedom. We got good crops, we raising families, we don't have to worry about being beaten or treated like animals. We want to stay here in Florida. The Seminoles say, well, we enjoy this new land we in. The climate is just right, there's plenty game, and there's plenty area we can plant crops. So that's when it all broke loose. Andrew Jackson, he put in to remove the Seminoles, him and his generals, and that's when the resistance began. The blacks didn't want to go back to slavery, so they kept urging the Seminoles, don't give up, stay here. We want to help you. And actually the blacks, they got arms also, and they began to fight with the Seminoles. A lot of people don't know that blacks acquired arms, and a lot of times it was more blacks fighting than there were Seminoles. General Jessup said, indeed, this is a Negro war. We are fighting more Negroes than we are Indians. Also, on the other hand, you had great leaders of black people such as John Horace, Abraham, John Caesar, Kyle Tom, Caesar Bruno. You could go on and on. These men acted as interpreters for the Seminoles. Some could speak English, and also they could speak Spanish. So the Seminoles depended on them as interpreters to get the idea of what the white people wanted. at that particular time, and they would do that. There were some Seminole leaders that were so powerful that they told the Seminoles everything to do, and the Seminoles depended on them because they knew these men had great wisdom. The one they called Abraham, they called him the sense bearer. And the reason they called him the sense bearer because he could make sense out of what the white people were saying, and he could make sense out of what the Indians were saying. I can go on all day long talking about the Black Seminoles. But at a period here, I want to know what you want to know. And if you don't ask me any questions, I'm going to ask you a question. We had 3 Seminole Wars. And the Seminole people today say it was only 1 Seminole War. I heard Mitchell Cypress say it. We're still at war with the United States government today. We don't fight with rifles. We don't fight with tomahawks, spears, or knives. We fight with lawyers. And today, the Seminole people call themselves the unconquered. Do you know the reason why? Because the Seminole people started all the way up in Tallahassee, St. Augustine, all the way up in North Florida. The United States government military pushed them all the way down into the swamps and Everglades. If they had stayed here, the United States government would have surrounded them and got them. They pushed them in the swamps. They spent $40 million trying to get rid of the Seminoles. They lost over 1,000 men. The Seminole War is the biggest Indian war in the entire United States. People think fighting the Apache, the Cheyenne, Sioux, and all of those out west was the biggest war. The biggest war was fought right here in Florida. They couldn't get them all. All they didn't catch or kill, send to Oklahoma. They pushed them all the way in the Everglades. They said, well, it's only 200 or 250 left. Let them stay down there. Let them live with the panthers, alligators, bears, mosquitoes, spiders, snakes. Let them stay down there. It's only 200 of them. Those people, they stayed down there and they survived. They start coming out years and years later, trading with people for different items. And they never did sign a military peace treaty. That's why they call themselves the unconquered. The Seminole people are thriving today. The Seminole people own the Hard Rock Cafe worldwide. Did y'all know that? On the New York Stock Exchange. The Seminole people is number 3 in cattle production. The Seminole people got orange groves, lemon groves, they got cane or sugar cane production, they got truck farming where they raise vegetables, they got bingo, they sell cigarettes. They are thriving. The same people that was pushed down in the Everglades thought they never would even survive, but they thriving today. Now, black people, what we call the Black Seminoles, those that was left and taken out to Oklahoma, they're in the tribe out there in Oklahoma. But when the green line is drawn in the sand, what I mean by that, the United States government say, well, let's pay the Seminoles some reparation money. When they spread the green line in the sand, the Seminoles stepped back on one side and looked at the black people and said, oh, who are you? The black people didn't get anything. But even today, we got black people, not only with the Seminoles, we got Cherokee, freedmen. They're in a court case wherein money is involved, and it seems as though black people will be the last on the line to get anything. But that's the way it is. Any questions so far? More accurate, a musket don't have anything, so it might boonga, 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 go anywhere.
Wow.
So this is not quite a period piece rifle, but it is a percussion cap rifle. And to get an authentic one, it costs you about $1,000. Here's your little cleaning kit,
Oh, look at that.
all of that.
Wow.
take it with them. Also, they would put their pipes or maybe some coins or anything they wanted to hide in there. Also, I'm wearing ostrich feathers. The ostrich feathers, as you know, come from Africa. Some guy came up with a bright idea, say, well, in order to trade with the Seminoles, I know they like feathers. I see they wear hawk feathers, they wear heron feathers. He said, well, if I can go to Africa and get these big, tall feathers, I can get more out of them. So they started importing ostrich feathers. Sometimes they would dye them, and the Seminoles loved them. So they started wearing the ostrich feathers. Also, what I'm wearing, one lady said, well, why do y'all wear dresses? And I was explaining to her, we wore what we call the Seminole long shirt, great coat. The Seminole long shirt was patterned after the settlers. They had a coat they would wear called the frock coat. And they patterned that after it. Now also, the long shirt, if you're in a canoe late in the evening, and the mosquitoes, if you are out hunting, you could squat down and your shirt would cover your legs. The shirt was always worn loosely. It was put together loosely so the mosquitoes couldn't bother you as bad. And also what I'm wearing is what they call a bandolier bag. Some people call it a possible bag. Anything you can possibly get in there, that's what you put in there. The bandolier bag carried little items like your pipe, maybe some money, your ammunition, or whatever. What they did, they decorated their bandolier bags with beads. And mine has got a black snake on it because we belong to the Little Black Snake clan. And they would have one design on the front. Sometimes they would have a different design on the back. So if they're at war, a guy would turn his back and the guy look at it, he might think that's another individual. When he turn around again somewhere else, make them think there's more men than they really are. Also, I'm wearing, my leggings is supposed to be made out of wool. And they wore leggings because here in Florida you have palmettos, you have briars, you have sawgrass, a lot of things here in Florida could cut your legs up. So they wore leggings. And they had a certain type of moccasin they called a pucker toe moccasin. It was made out of one piece of leather, and that's what I'm wearing today. I got some over there, so after I'm getting through talking, you can come over. Anything I got, I'll try to explain to you. But also, I'm wearing a sash around my waist, around my belly. I got a ceremonial sash here. And I'm wearing alligator teeth. The alligator teeth on here come from approximately a 12-foot alligator, maybe around 800 pounds. But they come from a big alligator. And even on the side of my sash, I got what they call a scoot. That bone plate is what you see on the alligator's back. They all line up and down his back. Believe it or not, that's his solar panels. He's a cold-blooded animal. He crawls out the water in the sunlight, and the bones up under the skin, they heat up so he can go back in the water, keep him warm. So they call them alligator scoots. And I have a few coins here. One was made in 1793. It's just coins to give that time period. Now, we had better weapons than the United States government had. The United States government had muskets, and we had rifles. The Spanish government gave the Seminoles the best rifles they had because they wanted the Seminoles to help protect their rights to keep Florida. And by the time the United States government issued good rifles, then the Seminoles, we were way ahead of them in military campaigns. Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
Did you know about the play that's called The Road Weeps, The Well Runs Dry? That's about the black Seminoles. Things are formed right now.
No, I didn't know about that.
Okay, I'm going to leave an article here. It's from Juneau, Alaska.
What's the name of
The
the?
name of the writer is Marcus Gardley, but I leave the information with the
Okay.
director. But it's performed this week for the very first time in Juneau, Alaska, with Black and Native American actors. Okay, the play is called "The Road Weeps and the Well Runs Dry," and it's by Marcus Marcus Gardley. He's the writer. He's a black man. He's the writer. And right now it's performed at the Perseverance, appropriately named, Theater in Juneau, Alaska. So if you just put that in, if you have a computer, they have all kinds of discussions about it and even some video. So if you want to pursue this any further, and eventually it's supposed to come to Florida. So it's performed for the very first time up there, of all places, about the Seminole. I thought you might want to know that.
Thank you. Let me give you a little more information about the Seminole people. In Georgia and Alabama, of course, you had Northern Creek Indians, you had Southern Creek Indians. They were two different groups. Here in Florida today, you got the Seminole tribe of Florida and you got the Miccosukee tribe of Florida. They are two different groups, but they're the same people. One group was north, one was south. The one we called the Miccosukees, they spoke a language called Hitchiti, Miccosukee. Then there was another group, they called themselves the Muskogee people. They spoke the Muskogean language. And like I say today, down on the trail, you have a lot of Miccosukee people, and of course you have the Seminole tribe of Florida. Now in Oklahoma, you have the Seminole Nation. The Seminole Nation are those people that was taken from Florida, taken to Oklahoma. Tell you a little story. When Florida State wanted to use that word Seminole, the people in Oklahoma, they put up a big protest saying you shouldn't use a Native American name as football team, baseball team, or whatever. But the Seminole tribe of Florida say, hey, we gave them permission and they are honoring us. And so that refuted what they were asking for, but the Seminole people say we love for them to honor us as being people with courage. And now the people in Oklahoma, they are kind of distant in a sense from the people in Florida. I've heard Seminole people say, oh, they left us, they ran off and left us, so they kind of distant from us. But they make contact with them, and they have communication back and forth. But the Seminoles who stayed in Florida here, they are the ones who say that we never will leave Florida because this is our home. We had such leaders as Osceola. Everybody heard about Osceola. Osceola, people called him a chief. Osceola was not a chief. Osceola was a resistance fighter. He was a leader in staying here in Florida. The only way you could become a chief, you had to be born through on your mother's side, through that bloodline. And Osceola did not have that in his bloodline. Osceola has been said when he was a little boy, his name was Billy Powell. His stepdad, they say his stepdad, his name was William Powell, and he was called Billy Powell. It's also been saying Osceola was half Scottish and half Creek Indian. But he always said, I'm full-blood Indian. I don't know. Also, when they dug his bones up in Fort Marion, the DNA showed that he had Negro blood also through his mother. So Osceola was a mixture. Osceola was a famous man because he didn't want to leave Florida. One Seminole man at the museum said, if you want to rank him military, Micanopy would be a 5-star general, Osceola would be a sergeant. But Osceola was famous because he fought to his last days that he would like for his people to stay here in Florida. Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
In the early ages, how were the Seminole Indians, how did they educate themselves before other cultures began to integrate into their lives?
It's pretty much, he taught him a lot of things. Actually, I believe a woman really helped make a man. I'm telling you. She can make a man or she can make his wrist limp. And this is me talking now. I think with any culture, the woman shaped the young boys into men. She look at the father. She look at the father as being the head, the leader. And so she tried to shape him in that same image. And I'm saying from ground zero, the women in the tribe, actually in the Seminole tribe, the women had a lot of power. It was a matrilineal society, you know, and the women a lot of time owned the land, they owned the building, the people stayed in. So if a divorce come, it was the man who got out. Well, not just thought the women pack up and leave, but that's my belief. It was the women who shaped the men. And actually she probably gave Osceola his first name. Then after a period of time, he won a name in a battle or whatever. But I believe it was the women. Next question. Yes, ma'am. Now, a lot of people, they see me dressed like this. They think I'm more Native American. But I'm not. I'm a American black man. And I grew up during the 40s and 50s. I'm 68 years old. So I could tell you about segregation, on up the integration. And but like I said, my heroes going to the movies was the cowboys. And after a while, I saw the Native American people. I was curious about how they could take things of nature and make beautiful things. But believe it or not, I just began this quest about 10 or 11 years ago when I went to a reenactment, and there was a gentleman from over in Naples area named Ralph Smith. I think Ralph been here one time. And Ralph told me about the black involvement. Then I got my little grandnephew, the one you see on the black stallion. I got him involved, and we started doing reenactments, and I started learning more and come to find out that we had Seminole people in my family. Now, the young man you see on the photograph, he's the one that actually does this presentation. His name is Matthew Griffin. 2 weeks ago, Matthew Griffin graduated from the University of Florida. Matthew Griffin was the first black student to pledge Alpha Gamma Rho in the history of the school. Alpha Gamma Rho is an agricultural fraternity. All your Ben Hill Griffins, big cotton planters, orange groves, that's their fraternity. He was the first black kid to graduate from the school and pledge Alpha Gamma Rho. I wish he could have been here today because he would have had to put on these hot clothes. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
There's any Seminole communities in this area that we could visit to see how
Probably the closest Seminole community would probably be the Big Cypress. You've heard of Alligator Alley? It's off of Alligator Alley. That's what we used to call the Alligator Alley. And probably Tampa. Tampa got a Hard Rock Cafe, and I think they got a small community there where they used to have a whole community there until they built the Hard Rock. But the Big Cypress Reservation, we do a reenactment every year, March the 1st and 2nd. And most of your reservations is down south. You got one in Immokalee, you got the Big Cypress, you got Brighton, and you got Hollywood. And believe it or not, probably Seminole people live all around you. I know one gentleman named Pedro Cepeda, he came here one year, and I think he lives over in Fort Myers. They're around, but you probably just don't see them as often because it's not that very many of them. But they got reservations throughout the state. Did I answer your question now? Any other question? Okay, let me start asking y'all some questions. No, I'm just kidding. Like I said, you hear a lot about Osceola, and really that's not his true name. His true name, it sounds funny, is Asen Yahola. Asen Yahola. That means he was the black drink crier. Asen Yahola was a black drink crier. What I mean by that, before they went into battle, they would try and purify themselves. There's a plant grow here in Florida. It grows up as a big bush called a Florida hollyberry plant. They would take that and boil it, and when they drank it, it will make them regurgitate everything in their stomach out on the ground. So when he put the cup to his mouth, he hollered out. And the word Yaha means wolf. You ever heard of Yeehaw Junction? It's not Yeehaw, it's Yaha. That means place of the wolf. So he hollered out like a wolf, so they named him Ase Yahola, the black drink crier. That's how he got his name. Osceola had 2 wives. One was Native American and one was black. Her name was Tretoter, the Morning Dew. They captured her, sent her back to slavery, and he went berserk. It's been said Osceola had 50 black bodyguards around him at different periods. Osceola knew that these black men was desperate to stay here in Florida, to stay free, and that they didn't have anything to lose, and that they were serious about being here in Florida. There's a lot of things about Asen Yahola, Osceola, that a lot of people just don't mention, especially that his connection with black people. Black people had a big part during the 1800s of the military aspect of fighting, staying here in Florida. You wouldn't believe how the Seminole people depended on them, even agriculturally. The black people taught them how to plant pumpkins near a tree where the vines would grow up the tree and animals couldn't bother them. Black people taught them a lot of things. But when the Indian Removal Act came into full swing, all the blacks, they did catch, they sent back to the plantation. They sent them to Oklahoma. Some of these same blacks, when they got to Oklahoma, the Creek Indians was there, and the Creek Indians was known for having black slaves. And the Seminoles said, we don't want to be near them because they want to take our black brothers, send them back south into slavery. After a period of time, they left Oklahoma, went all the way into Texas, all the way down into Mexico. Black people and Seminoles. When they got there, they made a deal with the government because the governor who was been in the, just say, when it came down to slavery, he was against slavery. So they hired these blacks and Seminoles as border guards. And they ended up protecting the borders against outlaws and renegade Indians. They stayed there a long time, and when they finally came back into the United States, they worked for the United States government. They were called Black Seminole Scouts. Some of these men won Congressional Medal of Honor in protecting the Southwest, and eventually later on through the years, a lot of these men ended up as Buffalo Soldiers. So after I get through giving a talk, I got information over there. I even got some of the dirt off some of the graves from the men that was sent to me from Brackettsville, Texas. But black men has been fighting in this country ever since the beginning of the United States of America. even the first man to die in the American Revolution was a black man. Did y'all know that? Crispus Attucks. We've been fighting since then all the way to Afghanistan, Pakistan, and everywhere else in this world. We've been fighting for the United States of America. But that's the price you have to pay. Any other questions? I usually have a nose ring, and kids ask me, I ask them, do they want to borrow it? There's always one kid want to borrow my nose ring. But I lost it down on the Big Cypress, and I usually have earrings that clip on. I'm too chicken to put a hole in my ear. And I got them in my pocket. I just don't feel like them things clipping on my ears today. But I usually have armbands when I get home. I'll all be black and blue, so I'm doing the best I can. Yes, sir.
I thought it was ironic you talked about when the black Seminoles went to Mexico, they were guarding the border.
Mm-hmm.
So that was to keep Americans out of Mexico, as opposed to the border block today with Mexico.
Well, it is kind of ironic, but what they had to deal with back then was bandits. Bandits coming into Mexico, robbing and coming back across the border. And you know, today there's a lot of things coming across the border that shouldn't be coming across today, but they were real fighters, and the Mexican government saw that they had the military skills. They were great fighters. They were strong men, and they were courageous men. Yes, ma'am. Okay. The Seminole people, when we were in Georgia and Alabama, called Creek Indians, we had log cabins. We took logs and made log cabins out of them. And but after we came to Florida and the military wanted to move us out of Florida, then we started building little huts. We would take palm tree limbs, especially the cabbage palms, and we would tie them together to make roofs. We would put posts in the ground. But today, the Seminole people build buildings they call chiquis, and actually it's a wooden frame with palm fronds as roofs. But when we were situated in a permanent place, we had log cabins. Got another question? Think of one. Yes, ma'am. The organized religion. Today, a lot of Seminole people has converted to the Christian belief. When I go on the Big Cypress, we down there for Saturday and Sunday. I always go to the Baptist church, and a friend of mine named Moses Jumper got to be good friends with him because he's a Christian man, and he's a believer, and I'm a believer. So I always go to Sunday school and church with him. But you got Methodists and you got other Christian-oriented churches, and now there's still some people believe in the old way of the breath maker, and every group got some kind of representation of God, but they have things in their belief similar and some is not similar. They might believe that mankind came out of a big hole in the ground, and the different color people came out this hole in the ground. The breath maker brought them out, and they got just like in the trees at night. They say there's little people. You know, they believe it. They believe it, and it's similar to, we know there's spirits, and they call their spirits different names. They got evil spirits. We got evil spirits. There's kindly spirits. We got kindly spirits. So today, basically, the majority of them, I believe in some Christian values. Then there's some guys just don't believe in it. I know some guys, they don't believe in Christianity, you know. So to each his own. Did I answer? Okay. Any other question? Do anybody want to know if this is my real hair? What about you? What about you, young lady? You wonder, is this my hair? It is my hair. I paid $99 for it. You were right. I'll be glad to get it off too. Yes.